So I'm actually super excited today to welcome Whitney Freya as my guest. She is an inspired living expert, and I'm sure that we are all going to be absolutely delighted and so interested to hear what she has to share with us from her great depths of wisdom. Whitney provides practical tools and practices that free your mind from limitations and scarcity to create more in your life that lights you up from the inside. She is an author, and her most recent book is called 30 Days to Unstoppable. So we'll definitely hear a bit about that, I'm sure. And she also has two other books, The Artist Within and Rise Above, Free Your Mind, One Brush Stroke at a Time. So welcome, Whitney. I'm really so delighted to have you on. And I would love, first of all, just to kind of get a bit of a background story about you, and why you are where you're at today. And perhaps if you'd like to maybe give us a little bit more information about what being an inspired living expert means, that would be good as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Arwen. I'm so happy to be here and have this conversation. I can already tell it's going to be super fun to explore this with you. So I guide people into a sacred and personal painting practice is kind of my main medicine. And I started this career, just such a funny story, because I was a complete wannabe artist growing up. Like, I was convinced that I had not inherited that artistic DNA, and I was always like hanging over the shoulders of my friends who were artistic, or their older sisters who were, doing a project for an art class or something. And I would always say, God, I wish I could paint or draw, but I can't. And I'd had an art teacher when I was 9 tell me that I had a great eye for color and balance, but drawing wasn't my thing. And right, can you imagine? It doesn't take much. It's
No.
amazing. We have to be very careful about what we say. And likewise, think of all the positive things you can say to young people, that they will remember. But
Yeah.
in that case, what I heard is that I had not inherited that artistic gene. Most of us were raised in this story that only some people are creative. Maybe their grandmother was an artist. And
Mm-hmm.
so therefore, they must have inherited a piece of that. They have talent. And fast forward, many years, I was 25, graduated from the University of Michigan in the States, and was selling books door to door, which is like, yeah,
Not so
guerrilla boot camp.
artistic.
No, it was, it's funny. It was a very mystical experience, actually. I was convinced that I was supposed to sell books until I came up with the idea. And I came up with ideas constantly. I almost felt like I'd been cursed. Like, you will be bombarded with ideas every hour of the day. It was almost like stop the ideas. And I had traveled a lot. So I was, I want to lead tours through the Fertile Crescent, and help people understand, that history. And I mean, I was all over the place. I was going to buy a boat and do, like charters in the Virgin Islands. I had so many different ideas. And then one day I was reading a book called Zen and the Art of Making a Living. And the author, Lawrence G. Bolt, quoted Nietzsche as saying, "Art is the proper task of life." And he said, most of you will think that this has nothing to do with you, right? Like, oh, art is just for those few creative people. He said, but this book will insist throughout that unless you adopt an artist mentality, you will not be able to create the life of your dreams. And that was like the only thing I knew for sure, is I wanted like this roller coaster ride, adventurous, fun life. I was not attracted to like a full-time job and a routine and all of that. So,
Yeah.
so I got super curious, like, okay, mister, where does one go to develop this artist mentality? Because every time I got up my courage to reach out and take an art class, like in college, to take the mixed media collage that I thought, probably I could handle. You had to take drawing
No
101,
drawing
102.
involved.
Yeah, no drawing, right. But to take that, you had to take drawing 101, 102, painting 101, 102. And I'm like, well, I mean, it wasn't even a question. It was like, oh, I can't do that. I mean,
Mhm.
now I kind of wish, although I love my story, but I should have just taken drawing 101, 102, right? If I knew then what I knew now. Um, and then I was living in Charleston, South Carolina, right after I graduated, and I finally got up the courage to call the local art center. And I remember I can still hear the old woman's voice. You know, I'm like, yeah, I'm calling to sign up for an art class, and she's like, oh, lovely. Like, well, the next registration is in 13 weeks. I'm like, 13 weeks? Like, I'm not even going to be living here in 13 weeks. Like, I don't. What? How can it be this difficult to get into an art class? So that's what I had experienced when I read, unless you adopt an artist mentality, you're not going to be able to, create the life of your dreams. So in that moment, it was like, this is like a YMCA for your creativity. Like, I had read about the right brain, left brain relationship, and how often when many of us get to that stressed out point, without even thinking about it, we end up doing something that's a more right brain activity. So you may find yourself in the garden or baking cookies, or I used to make collages just with magazines in
Mhm.
college. Like, all of a sudden I'd be like, who has magazines? And I would just start collaging. And I realized, having read that that's what I was doing. I was like bringing myself back into balance. So the idea came to me, finally, the idea that I had been waiting for was to open an art center that was, I called it the Creative Fitness Center. And I bought an old house that had 13, low income people living in it, owned by a slumlord, who just let the house go to pot kind of thing. I bought that in Nashville, Tennessee, in 96, and opened the doors May 1st, 1996. Still had never painted on a canvas.
Wow.
But I was super confident for some reason. I don't even know why, that, people would walk in and I'd be able to help them kind of work out that creative right brain so that they could go back out into the art that is their life and create the change they wanted. And I had no business plan, thank goodness, because I don't think I would have opened it. It never really made much money. Um, but it was this like call. It was like this sense of destiny. And I remember crying, because just being like, what am I doing? And, I don't know if this is going to work. And I remember telling a friend, I go, it feels like this train is coming into this station, tooting the horn, inviting me on to steer it. And if I don't get on, someone else will. It's very like Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to be on that train. Like, I feel very passionate about this. And so I opened the doors, and I swear, Arwen, it's like I'd tell people, I have no art training. I don't know. And it's like they wouldn't even hear me, because how can you own an art center and have no art training?
Yeah.
Right? So right from the beginning, and I've realized writing my latest book, 30 Days to Unstoppable, and I've had some people say, like, Whitney, you've been unstoppable since the very beginning.
Mm.
So part of being unstoppable is realizing the same premise, that like what is inspiring you is being offered to you, right? It's like I was being offered the opportunity to bring in this whole new way of making art. It was the first drop-in art center in Nashville, Tennessee. There were no pottery painting places, nothing like that. It was a totally foreign concept. And in 96, Nashville was still very conservative, and people were more concerned about if it was cool to be seen somewhere
Right.
than if it was new and different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was definitely like paddling against the current. But when you feel that sense that there's something bigger,
Yeah.
this was bigger than me. And it was so clear, because I had there was no logical reason that I would be qualified to do this, except that nothing's scarier than knocking on doors, selling books. And
Yeah.
I knew law of averages, if I just kept putting myself out there, that something would happen. So 25 years later is where we are now, right? And, a lot has changed about what I do and the conversation I have with people and how I coach and support people. But at the foundation is still this truth that I know to be true, is that we're all immensely creative.
Yeah.
And we're creating our reality in each and every moment with the thoughts we choose to think, the words we choose to speak, our expectations, our beliefs. And what's happened is most of us, you know, myself included for a long time, we're doing it without awareness.
Yeah.
You know, just thinking that's the way it is.
Mm.
And the truth is that it's very malleable, very creative.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, at this point in space-time history, you know, it's incredibly important for us to all own our creative nature.
Yeah.
You know, so if any of you listening are like, oh, I'm not creative, I can't even draw a straight line, that's really not the creativity we're talking about. The reason I've realized that I use painting as a modality is because most people are so afraid of painting on a canvas. Like at my art center, I had everything. I mean, there was pottery and mosaics, and, you know, we did the Millefiori clay, we did paper making, we did all these things. And my students that did all the other classes would still say, oh, but I can't paint on a canvas.
Yeah.
But my painting students weren't afraid of anything.
Mm.
So at one point I relocated to a smaller location, and so I couldn't offer everything. And I'm like, well, I'm only going to offer painting workshops because that's where people overcome fear. And that's where they have personal transformation. And, you know, they learned, some of them, and still to this day, I have clients who I work with online who have never painted before, end up painting paintings that I look at and I'm like, wow, I don't even know how I would paint that. They're blowing themselves away because they're taking out all the traditional, like, who's good and talent and how to do it. And they're just, it's like they're channeling it.
Yeah.
But in the process, they've had to reevaluate. I've been telling myself this whole time, I'm not creative. I can't draw a straight line. I can't paint. And now I can, in our unconscious mind, chunks information together. So on an unconscious level, your brain is like, whoa, hang on there. So if we can paint, that means we might be able to do all these other things that we've been telling ourselves we can't do. And I swear, Arwen, I mean, you say I get so excited just still 25 years later. It still blows me away how powerful this practice is. Working with symbols and images and looking at life as the canvas, you know, and you as the artist, and paying attention to what images and colors and symbols are speaking to you or crossing your path. You know, quantum physics says if you hear or see anything more than once within 24 hours, you're being summoned, you know, like there's a message for you there. So that's what I talk about with my painting students, right? Is this more subtle way of perceiving all that is available to us. So much more than what was taught to us in school or around the dinner table, you know, in traditional conversation and education. So, you know, today, as of today, I'm teaching, you know, all online. I have been teaching online since 2009. And
oh, wow, you're an early starter to the
online.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was just step-by-step photos in 2009. You know?
Oh, wow, yeah.
No videos. But people tell me, you know, that learning at home, teaching, you know, painting at home, they're not comparing themselves to other people in the class. They can do it at their own time. And of course, the pandemic, you know, there's that added, you know, advantage. But it's very powerful. And, you know, I have a lovely community and lots of ways to interact. And it just becomes this community, this collective of people that are all about the what if, you know, and the wild ideas and encouraging each other, rather than like, have you ever done that before? Like, I don't know if that's going to work, you know, like that is not the community that we've created together. It's a very creative, empowering community. And then I started in 2010 training, certifying creatively fit coaches to teach the way I teach. And that's just been like one of those things in my life that I'm like, oh, thank goodness that happened. You know, like, it's been such an incredible family for me. And we just are, you know, an incredible circle right now all around the world. So that's, you know, a little bit about.
That's you. Yeah,
that's me.
I have so much to say about that from and this is probably why, you know, I'm interviewing you, is I absolutely had a similar, well, no, not similar story, because I'm obviously not doing what you're doing, but the same message was given to me as a young child. So my dad is an artist and he taught art. So, you know, in his generation was told, oh, you can never make a living from being an artist, so you've got to get a proper job, and became a teacher. But he was always doing art of his own as well. But yeah, as a child, I was told, not by my dad, but I think by my mum, oh, you're not very good at drawing, are you?
Right.
And so, my brother was a lot better than me at drawing. And yeah, so I always felt like I'm not artistic. I don't know that I ever thought, oh, I'm not creative, because I was always into dancing and acting and, the performance arts. But anyway, only in the last 6 months, I started doing a watercolor painting class. And yeah, I mean, same as I'm sure a lot of people that you have, that I've been like, oh, wow, I can actually, do this, and I can make something that even I'm like, oh, that doesn't look too bad. But also interesting what you said about the online, because we were in Melbourne, most lockdown city in the world. And we had it was only a few weeks after I'd started that we were locked down again, and our classes moved online. And in a way, I almost preferred doing it online, because, yeah, it wasn't like I wasn't sitting in the classroom looking at what someone else was doing. And even having the teacher kind of looking at it, and my teacher, likes to sort of help you make your painting look better. So she'll come and do a bit, which, when you're in the class, you're kind of like, oh, great. But it's almost better to not have that, and to just be doing all the creating yourself of your own work. So it's just been such a powerful experience to suddenly go, oh, I can actually do that. And I do find watercolors quite a forgiving medium as well. It kind of looks pretty, even if you're not strictly doing it right or anything like that. But I love your just more go with the flow approach. And I read a quote yesterday as well. Of course, I did read it yesterday, from one of my favorite teachers, who is also an artist. And she wrote on Instagram, creativity is in your genes, living is an art.
Yes.
That's Dr. Deanna Minnick. So I just love this whole concept of embracing creativity, and it's a big thing that I'm incorporating within what I call my 5-star wellbeing approach. It's part of the being aspect of that people, to be truly well, holistically well, they need to get in touch with that part of themselves. So I'm so excited to be able to talk to you more about that. So what do you say to people, like I was not so long ago? I mean, yeah, look, I really wouldn't say that I talked about myself as not creative, but for people who just go, no, I can't do that, I'm not innately creative. So can you just give us a little bit of your, someone starts doing a course with you, how do they get into that? How do they bring that out in themselves?
Right. Well, there's so many different facets to that. So the first thing is, one, to understand that when we make the statement, I'm not artistic, I'm not creative, I can't paint, I can't draw, that is being sourced from an old story, the way we were raised, that reinforced that only some people are creative, and it's a talent that only some people have. And like you said, even if you have it, what's it going to get you? You better not spend too much time doing it. You got to get on with the real stuff.
Yeah.
So the first thing is to understand that truly your lack of confidence or belief that this is available to you is based simply on this old, outdated story that not everyone's creative. And the second thing is to understand, and I'd love if you can, kind of feel into it, but this painting that I'm talking about and this creative practice, it's almost more like energy work.
Yeah.
Like when you leave your watercolor, right? Isn't there like this, it's like this buoyancy, whatever, if you've been worried about anything or had a hectic day, it's gone.
Yep.
you know, and you just find yourself like, I wonder, it's like, it's just this bubbling energy, sparkly of like, maybe I could do that. And, you just open up to possibility.
Yeah.
So that's really the question for people, is not, do you want to paint, as far as I'm concerned? It's, do you want to feel more empowered? Do you want to feel like you are tapping into what's possible, rather than, which is so easy to do these days, all the things that are going wrong and all the endings and all the chaos and all of that, right? Are you wanting some kind of change in your life? Are you ready to let go of some things? It's way more effective and fun to replace, like to change your focus to something totally new and different than to really focus in on changing something that you've always wanted to change, right?
Mm.
It's better to say, okay, so I spend a lot of time doing this. I don't want to do that anymore, or whatever it is. And there's no judgment, but I want something new in my life. I want to do something different. I want to experience newness in my life. So doing something new and totally different is only going to, help you attract more of that. And whatever is no longer kind of in alignment with this sense of possibility and spaciousness will fall away. So that's the other thing, is to realize we're not talking about creating product.
Yeah.
We're talking about aligning with the part of you that absolutely does exist. Everybody has it. The part of you that leans into the unknown, that can see, for example, the world right now is ripe for change. The world is being cracked open because there's newness wanting to emerge, and things need to come into the light. We need to see that they're there so we can choose whether or not to bring them across the threshold, into a new way of being, which is being called for on so many levels, environmentally, politically, socially, economically. So do you want to be a part of that? Because that is absolutely dependent on the creative frequency of our planet. Are more of us looking at what's wrong, or are more of us looking at what's possible? And when we make that tipping point, which I don't think has to be 51% of humanity, actually, if you look at that like 100th monkey story, but when enough of us realize we have the ability to create the change we want on this planet, no matter what, no matter how steep the hill to climb or whatever, we have the means, we can do it. That is what motivates me. Like, that's what inspires me to keep, putting myself out there and inviting people to the canvas. And along the way, I mean, I'm a recovering recognition freak. Like, I love painting a pretty picture. I love selling art. I've got my art hanging all over my house, which I didn't used to, back in the day. But it really is about lifestyle, and it's about wellness on a totally different level. I was just telling a friend about, I think it was Gretchen Rubin's book, The Happiness Project. And she found that happy people have projects.
Yeah, right.
They have a creative project going on. I remember a client telling me in this very dramatic way, like, you're either a creator or a consumer, which is really so true. And what it is, are we looking outside of ourselves to fill us up, or are we generating that from within?
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons that we've all been, put in this big global timeout. Go to your room and remember that life is an inside out job.
Yep.
So this is what I'm talking about. So do you want that?
Mm.
Right? So if you want that, then I can assure you, after 25 years, I am a master at helping people who think, oh, I can't even paint or draw, to paint. I don't draw. I'm really not. I have not spent a lot of time drawing. I have surprised myself many, many times drawing, like, whoa. But that's not what I teach. I teach playing with color. And the way we get started, so the other response, the more technical response, is every single canvas that I create, I probably have one like laying around here. I mean, this bee, let me see if I can just show you without showing you the actual. So like this kind of thing, this is what we start with, you know? So the canvases start with literally summoning up your inner 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And it can be finger painting, it can be dripping, and we use spray bottles and stencils and sponges, and it's literally just layering color onto the canvas. Partly to give you that transition, right? From either whatever you've been doing or the old beliefs and just playing with color.
Yep.
And then the next step becomes super easy. Like it's one step at a time. And along the way, we learn that in life, you don't have to have this laser beam, clear, focused, this is what I want. You know, this is what I'm going to see at the mountaintop. We're called to go to the mountaintop, but it's one step at a time, because if you just focus on the mountaintop when you're down in the foothills, it can get overwhelming because you can't understand all the steps you're going to need to take between where you are and where you want to be. But you take that first step, that's pretty easy. Then the next step is very obvious, you know, and you just keep taking one step at a time. So we practice that at the canvas. I have perfectionists practice making mistakes at the canvas.
I love
have
it.
introverts practice being wild and free and putting on loud music and dancing around while they paint at the canvas. Like you can create at the canvas the way you want to create in the art that is your life.
Yeah.
You know, you can be the change there. You can practice being unconditionally loving of yourself just for 20 minutes while you paint.
Yep.
So you're developing self-awareness.
Yeah.
And you're learning to focus on what you want, right? Because we're painting pictures all the time. We're painting pictures in our mind. And often we're stressing and worrying and painting pictures in our mind of what we don't want.
Yep.
And
so true.
And what you're setting yourself up for more than anything is stepping into the circumstance that you didn't want in the first place, but you've spent so much time thinking about it and painting the picture of that happening in your mind, that's what you've attracted.
Yeah.
And that is just real. It's real. It's what are your expectations? And there is a way of looking at things which just happens naturally at the canvas. Like how many times anyone who's painted has had the experience where you put something down and you're like, oh, I messed it up.
Yeah.
That was the wrong color. I screwed it up. And then in the end, you're like, it's so much better because of that screw up.
Yeah.
You know? Like that took me a totally different direction, or all the layers that I had to go through to get to that color that made me happy made this painting so deep. So then you're literally creating this new neural pathway in your brain that's like, so when things don't go according to plan, actually, if I just keep going, probably that will serve me in some way. So there's just this infinite list of ways that the canvas meets you exactly where you are and will mirror back to you exactly where you're getting stuck or where you want to be personally liberated. So that's the freedom and the liberation. And you can also wait for life to do that. Life does it for us, right?
Yeah.
You sprain an ankle, you get in a fender bender, you get a cancer diagnosis. Like life will hold up a mirror and say, there is dis-ease in your system and you didn't listen to the subtle messages. None of us are very good at that, you know.
Yeah.
But we get the cosmic 2x4, as I call it. You know, you have to deal. And then we do. So I'm just thinking, let's just take care of it at the canvas, you know, and avoid having, you know, needing life. Because I've had plenty of cosmic 2x4s and, you know, I knew it all along. There was no big surprise. But finally I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting kicked out of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So this is why I paint. And there does seem to be, and I'm so grateful for it, but this, you know, there is an energy around everything that I write and teach that just creates this space where it's like, okay, I don't have to be afraid of making a mistake. I can just take one step at a time. I'm not going to be judged. And this is where the alchemy happens, you know, because you're not someone who paints and then you do, and then the sparks start flying, you know, because your alchemy is when you combine disparate elements to create something totally new. So if you want newness in your life, staying in your comfort zone is not going to get you there.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
painting at the canvas is really not that scary. I
yeah.
mean, it doesn't hurt. There's really nothing that can happen bad to you from painting on a
So,
canvas.
do you find that people find you, are they finding you because they want to learn to paint, or are they finding you because they want change in their life, or is it both?
It's both. I mean, I do think, compared to 2009 when I started teaching online, I do hear a lot more of people saying, I just was feeling, depressed, blah, whatever, apathetic about life. And I understood, or somebody mentioned I should do something creative,
Mm,
or I understand, there's a creativity in me, or I remember back when I was a kid, I used to love to do this. And then we
yeah.
all get into adulting, we get so serious and we learn through play, I mean, there's so much value in those things. So there is a bit more awareness, of the kind of health and wellness benefits
Yeah.
of having a creative practice. And I know that's where we're going. I mean, within hopefully 5 or 10 years, I'm putting that out there to be optimistic, but it will become more common for people to understand, like, if I'm going to be a healthy, like you said, holistically healthy, fulfilled, happy person, I have a creative outlet. Like, oh,
Mm,
what's your creative outlet? How do you express yourself creatively? It could be anything. It could be gardening, it could be
yeah.
glass blowing, all these different
Cooking.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but making things, like, making things is empowering.
Mm,
And it's an I am statement. I am here. I made my mark today. Like, no one else could have done this. It's a really, like I said, it's this very multifaceted, multidimensional experience. And the changes that I've seen people make, are often very small, subtle changes, but lead to
yeah.
big lifestyle changes and happiness changes. And, they feel more authentic, because
Mm,
they're
mm,
expressing themselves. Again, that authenticity, if you're looking outside of yourself for something to help you feel more authentic, like, that's got
yeah.
to come from within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite of authentic, isn't it? If you're looking outside for that. Yeah. And so with your online, I know you've got courses on your website, but do you do live online teaching as well?
I have, yeah, so I have, like 20 online courses, and then we have a private Facebook group for everyone in all the online courses that I'm
Mhm.
popping into live all the time. In April, I did 5 live open studios that were just free to everyone in my community.
Mhm.
Um, and I did travel and teach live, and I'm sure we'll be doing some of that again.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely, when you're teaching online, it's important to round out the online experience, with the kind of live, personal uh, aspects. And my top tier courses, my coaching training, and then the I Am the Unstoppable Dream, that is a partner with the new book, 30 Days to
Mhm.
Unstoppable. Those both include lives with me all the time.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
and and that's just because, frankly, I love to circle up live with the people, in my
Yeah.
community, because we're all we're all on this same kind of, you know palette or frequency, where we all
Vibration.
have been traditionally idealistic.
Yeah. Mhm.
We've all been more inspired by what's possible, and curious about the mystery, and what else is really going on beyond what the logical, rational mind can perceive. And so I love my people that sign up for my courses, because the only reason you're signing up is because we would enjoy spending a
Yeah.
lot of time together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love creating those kinds of experiences, and I am grateful and do believe that the online connections are very real, and I've gotten a chance to meet lots of people in person, and it never feels like we don't know each other. It's
Yeah.
always like, if we really never met, this is it. This is our first hug. Like, it's
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah.
So,
And it's the whole energy thing again. You're talking about it being energy work, and then it just creates and gives everybody so much energy when, I mean, it doesn't have to be a live in-person connection, but no, I can imagine. So I do want to talk a little bit more about symbols, and reading your new book yesterday. You talk right from the start about sacred geometry. So I'd love to get, I guess, a bit of a 101 on that. I mean, I know it's a very deep topic, but for people who've never heard of, what is sacred geometry, just a bit of an introduction to that and the whole thing. I think symbols, it's just unfortunately not part of our modern Western culture that people recognize the power of symbols nearly as much as we used to. So I'd love to hear more from you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me kind of follow my own journey to sacred geometry and the latest book, 30 Days to Unstoppable, because it's a pretty fun story. Like, what happened is in 2009, I started painting owls. And, I painted multiple owls, and I was like, well, owls are super fun to paint. And then, more months go on and I'm still painting owls. And I would joke, I remember joking like, oh, Picasso had his blue phase, I'm having my owl phase, And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, Whitney, let's sit down and not paint an owl. And like, I couldn't. It just kept coming out owls. And I mean, I traveled to Africa to this conference, and I'm painting owls with, children in South African schools. We paint this big owl mural, and just owls, owls, owls. And then I was in a workshop. I was co-teaching with a singer-songwriter friend in Nashville. And we were doing these collage cards, kind of like soul collage, I think. And I had this one card that had a lot of divine feminine energy on it. And at that point, I was not tuned in to the divine feminine or the goddess. It was completely not in my field at all. So I'm looking at this card and I'm like, huh. And the thought came to me, I think it was given to me. I wonder who comes up if I Google who is the goddess of art. Right? So I Google it, and it's Athena with the owl on her shoulder. Right? And I'm like, wow, maybe there's a reason I'm painting owls. Right? And so 2009 to 2011, I moved to Oregon. I painted owls up until I started working with the shaman. The short of the story is I ended up leaving my marriage after, buying the 700-acre ranch and building the dream house and moving across country, and then realizing like, oh, I get it. Nothing's going to make you happy. And I've got to go be happy, So I had healers and shamans tell me later, the owls were being sent to me because owl medicine is very transformational. Owls can see things in the dark that no one else can see. So they're guides to help us when we're in our shadowlands. I was in an underworld experience in my marriage, and the owl was sent to guide me out. And that's what it felt like. It felt like, there might have been a plan A, B, and C for us in our relationship, to do the underworld work, to go in there and experience that. But it's like he got super comfy down there, and I was like Persephone, like I'm ready to leave. Like, let's go into the light, I mean, he didn't have to work anymore. We're living the dream. And he was still like, furrowed brow, really committed to, just that heaviness. And so I followed the owl out into the light and out of the marriage, and started painting other symbols, because I'd had a dream that as a creatively fit coach, we now prescribed symbols to people. That in the process of painting and getting to know the symbol and spending that much time with it, that they would get the energy they need to create whatever change. So I started painting sacred symbols, and I would either paint what came to me, like what I saw. I went to Africa right around that time and came back with a talisman. It was a double double-headed crocodile, which
Mm-hmm.
is a big protective totem, which was perfect because that was kind of the beginning of the end of my marriage, right? So I was like, okay, I think I'm going to need some double croc energy.
Yeah.
So I painted the double croc, and then I painted the Triskelion symbol, which is a Celtic symbol for change and movement.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't this conscious, like, I want to create change in my life, so I'm going to paint Triskelion. It was like I saw it and it clicked, it resonated, it
Yeah.
inspired me to sit down and paint it. It hung in my space. So that's the other thing. So part of like the next layer of what I teach, once people understand that it's a mirror and they can develop self-awareness and all that, is that you can have this two-way dialogue with your higher self, your infinite self, because the logical, rational mind is language. Like your left brain, you learn language, you store it in your mind so you can draw on it. Symbols are independent of that logical, rational mind, and they speak more to the right hemisphere, the intuitive present moment. So you can either decide, like, okay, I want big change in my life. What's a symbol for change? Google it, ask a friend, ask me, Triskelion, paint a Triskelion. Okay, you paint that, you hang it in your space. Energetically, it's reinforcing this energy of change and movement.
Yeah.
And it's subtle. It's so subtle. And then sometimes you're seeing something like, oh, I've been seeing hummingbirds everywhere. Snakes keep coming up, or lotus flowers. Paint
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And the whole time you're painting, I swear, it's like you're having a conversation. The lotus flower is going to remind you, no muck, no lotus. This challenge you're going through, you're being prepared. So look up, look towards what is going to happen when you bloom, rather than focusing on the muck and how mucky and little dark and, whatever it is. So you get access to your own inner wisdom, which when I say you, I'm my paradigm is you are the infinite being having the human experience.
Yeah.
So I kind of have a running dialogue with my infinite self and my human self,
Yeah.
allowing my human self to be perfectly human. And then my infinite self is always up there kind of chuckling, like, like, but so that aspect of the painting, it's like pulling an oracle card, but you're in the oracle deck. Like, life is presenting you with the card, and then
Yeah.
you're physicalizing it in the painting and engaging with it and bringing it into your field, because you're creating it. It's coming from outside of you, but then you're creating it. And there becomes this really dynamic relationship that you create with these subtle, intuitive energies that are there to guide you. They're there to help you when you're, at a fork in the road. Your logical mind will tell you the most logical fork to take. That's not always the highest path. That's not always the best route. So you want to tap into both is all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
We
it's
have
really
two halves of our brain for a reason.
exactly. So sacred geometry is, based in nature. I mean, it's mathematics, it's physics. But if you look at nature, and you can, you just look up sacred geometry in nature, the mathematical formulas, of these different shapes are reflected in the distance that the tree branches grow,
Yeah.
and the angles of things. Spirals in the middle of a cactus are the same as the torus, which is the magnetic field of the earth and how the energy flows. It's like this underlying design of everything is sacred geometry. And in the New Year's 2018, 2019, I spent 20 hours in the darkness. I put on a sleep mask, and it was only 20 hours because I wanted to take it off before the sun rose so I could start painting in the dark. And I had read about the Celtic shamans who were the poets back in the day, and they would go into these huts that were specially made that were completely dark, and they'd spend 24 hours in there, and they'd emerge and write poetry, and that poetry was thought to be incredibly potent. And the poetry was the medicine. They'd speak poetry into the, the herbal tinctures, and that was where the healing was. And so when I read that, I was like, well, how much more powerful to paint after being in the darkness for 20 hours? But during that time when I was meditating, I connected with the symbol of Metatron's cube. It came to mind, which everyone has probably seen in the 2D form. It's the 6-pointed star, with like circles, a circle at the tip of each of the 6-pointed stars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's 2 pyramids coming together, which is a symbol of union. It's the Merkaba is also in there. And Metatron's cube is the symbol that contains all the Platonic solids. So the Platonic solids all have a geometric form as is determined by their chemical makeup. And so all of the Platonic solids, which are basically the building blocks for everything, are in Metatron's cube. So in that meditation, what I was given is that sacred geometry is a bridge. Because what it does is it creates this sense of harmony and union between your logical, rational mind and your intuitive, creative mind.
Okay.
The logical, rational mind can research sacred geometry and be like, oh, there's mathematical equations and nature and all kinds of stuff to back this up. And then the intuitive mind just loves it. I mean, it's been carved into the Egyptian, pyramids thousands of years ago, these same symbols. I mean, it's just mind-blowing, the golden thread that they really are for us throughout history. And so that symbol became a blueprint for a teaching that I was given over the course of that time, which was a call for humanity to remember how to care for ourselves as vibrational beings. Because again, scientifically, we know everything exists as energy before it exists as matter.
Yep.
So any physical symptoms you have are like the end of the line.
Yes.
Of whatever discordance, dis-ease is happening in your life, little, big stuff.
Yeah.
So we can learn to manage and care for the energy within and around us so that things don't have to manifest physically.
Yeah.
And what I was getting, and it's funny because all this I kind of downloaded, which I've been called to say that I've downloaded it. It's part of my work. Right before the pandemic, this was all 2019 that I was getting all this, right? And I started teaching it online to help me finish the book in January 2020. And so we're talking about having this conversation, like, you guys, I'm being given this. It's like preparing us for whenever, the shit hits the fan in the external world, we can be okay. Like, how do you source your sense of security? Which if you don't have that, it's very unnerving and anxious producing, right? Yeah. Which is not conducive to a happy, healthy, energetic state of being. And so if the external systems are going to be crumbling and restructuring, where do we source that security? Well, we source it from within. We align with energy. We nurture a vibration of energy that is at such a level, so a higher vibration, so that whatever happens in the external world, it has to meet or, it has to resonate or raise your vibration in order to stay in your field. So what that means is, for example, when the pandemic news rolled through, right? If you're high vibration or low vibration, same thing. Lockdown, same thing. Risk of getting whatever. But if you're nurturing a higher vibration, you're going to perceive this as an opportunity, right? There's a lesson to learn here. Like, wow, we're all being shown how interconnected we are. There's no separation. We are one, basically like one cell of a being. Like, what happens to one happens to everyone. Like, how beautiful is that? I wish more people, well, I guess the pandemic will stick around until we get that.
Yes, totally.
Mark my words, right?
Yep.
And I would say, it doesn't mean you're not going to lose your house or your job, but you're going to have friends inviting you in. You're going to have other people offering you a job, right? So I'm not saying be high vibration. I hear a lot, like the spiritual bypassing and like, oh, be high vibration and everything will be fine. Okay.
Not that simple.
Yeah, it's not that simple. And it does work.
Yeah.
Because energy is energy and it behaves by certain laws. One of the biggest ones is like attracts like. Mm-hmm. And so in Unstoppable Dream, it's 30 days. Like each chapter is basically a meditation. It's also on Audible or on audiobook on my website. And it's meant to, give you this blueprint with the symbol of Metatron's cubes, and those 6 circles around the outside are the 6 spheres of wellness. Mm-hmm. And you picture them however you want to picture them. I picture them like Wizard of Oz, Glinda the Good Witch, that glowing pink orb. But you keep those spheres of wellness, love, compassion, courage, alignment, gratitude, and presence. You keep those full. Mm-hmm. You tap in. Okay, if someone asked you, what do you love? I want you to be like, oh, I love the color magenta. I love sunrises. I love green tea. I love, giving my kids hugs. I love walking outside. I love tulips. I want you to have so many things that you love on the tip of your tongue, right? Mm-hmm. Compassion. I want you practicing radical self-compassion. You are human. You're here to learn, which means you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall. You're going to say the wrong things. You're going to make the wrong choices. That's okay. That's part of it, right? Yeah. And when you're compassionate with yourself, it's way easier to be compassionate with others, yes, which the world needs. Mm-hmm. Courage. You want something different. You want something to change. You're going to have to step into the unknown. And that resistance is not there to stop you. It's there to bring you present. It's there to say like, okay, do you remember? Do you remember like why you're doing this? Do you remember that you don't have to keep listening to what your dad told you when you were little? Okay, are you ready? Let's go, let's take the leap. And alignment, like, can we stop telling people we'll do things that we don't want to do? And can we focus on the things that we love and be courageous enough to tell our family like, yeah, sorry, I'm busy. I'm doing what I love to do. Yeah. Because we want our children to do that, yes, absolutely. So in the process of making sure all your 6 spheres of wellness are full, like make sure you're doing things you love and being compassionate and grateful, you don't have time to focus on, what's going wrong or the news headlines or whatever. I mean, it's a simple thing we can do. It's a simple, accessible thing that anybody can do. You don't need any amount of money. You don't need any skills or training, but you can train yourself to focus on what you desire. And when you're feeling sad or angry or frustrated or ticked off or whatever it is, you realize that that is inspiring you. It's saying, hey, yeah, this is not okay. So what would be okay? So the creative mindset turns and focuses on, okay, how do I want it to be? And am I going to be part of that change? Or am I just going to envision it and hold space for it, which is a super valuable thing to do? But hold space for what's possible. Don't keep, poking, little gum and wrapped up paper in the dam that's about to break of the things that aren't going right. Don't focus your attention there. So it doesn't mean don't feel the feelings. It just means truly the feelings are there to steer you in a different direction. The feelings are there to educate you. They're information. They're not meant to be like attached, Velcroed to yourself, super glued to yourself forever out of some martyrdom. Yep. That's why they're there. You know? They're there to stay in motion, and they're there to say, hey, this pisses you off, right? So what are you going to do about it? You're a creative being. You created this reality, so create a new one. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. So cool. So, I mean, you've given us a lot there. I guess what I'd love, because, I love people to kind of be able to get at least something they can, walk away with right now. Mm-hmm. What would you say, what's the first step for somebody to take? I love it. Okay. So let's all go on a little vision quest. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. In the next 48 hours, I want you to tune into and pay attention to a color that attracts you the most. Some sort of animal, an animal interaction is going to happen, and then any kind of symbol. It could be a crystal, a stone, anything like that. A color, an animal, and a symbol. And look for those. Just stay open. Like you're on a treasure hunt. Okay. And then look up the meaning, the symbolism of the color. Look up the symbolism of the animal, and look up the symbolism of the symbol. It could be a candle. Like I'm looking around, it could be a succulent. It could be whatever this, I think this is like an Amazonite. It could be anything. But look that up. And then how does that have a message for you? Because there's a reason that you're attracted to it. You can also, another version is just right where you are right now. Just look around your house and pick out 3 things that are super special to you, right? The things that you're like, okay, I've always had that, or I love that, or whatever it is. Just pick 3 things and do the same thing. Google, search engine, the meanings of those 3 things, and ask yourself, okay, you won't even have to ask. You'll be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just an example of how much the visual world is constantly offering you guidance, offering you access to higher levels of wisdom, because we're not getting the highest wisdom, through the news.
No. Turn the news off, people.
Yeah. It's just like you're spending, putting your attention on something. So the invitation is to put it on what is attracting you. What color do you love the most? If you think about, oh, I've been wearing a lot of blue lately. Well, look up the shade of blue and how is that reflective? So just open up to it. There's no pressure. There are no have-tos. We're infinite beings. We've got nothing but time. But just open up to, am I meant to connect to my creative self? Am I meant to tune into this visual level of guidance? Am I meant to remember how to care for myself as a vibrational being? Okay, yeah, whatever she said. But if I'm meant to do that, let me know. And you'll get the message. And then go to whitneyfreya.com and share your email with me and, see if anything piques your interest. I believe people feel a resonance. They feel a call. You know? And just answer the call. Don't let your logical, rational, fear-based mind tell you old stories to keep you safe in the known, because I've never had anyone suffer any physical, mental, emotional, financial injury from trying to paint. Right? There's really nothing to be afraid of. That's another thing, is we're either coming from fear or love. So whenever we feel resistance, you can ask yourself, what am I afraid of? And don't just say, oh, I don't know. Like, what are you afraid of? Because as soon as you get curious, it can't hold up, because you realize there's nothing to be afraid of. Otherwise, I've done it. We can spend years telling ourselves we can't do something out of fear without really examining the fear. And as soon as we do, it disappears like smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, that's so true. So beautiful. So you mentioned your website. Have you got, I think all your books are on your website, but presumably they're available through other channels as well.
Yeah. So, Amazon, everything's on Amazon. And 30 Days to Unstoppable ships anywhere in the world for sure. Because it's printed through there. So 30 Days to Unstoppable. I really, I read it. I read it for Audible. I read the audio.
Yes.
And the man helping me, between he and I, at the end of every chapter, we were just like, I'm like, God, that was good. He cried at the end.
Oh.
He about cried because he's just like, I just really enjoyed reading this with you. And like, it's good. It's really good stuff, And I read it and I can't even, I'm like, I wrote that. It came from me.
Love
And
that.
and it's really important, and everyone can use, the information. I even have it on my YouTube channel, Whitney Freya LLC, if you just look up Whitney Freya. But
Yeah.
I have the first 19 of the 30 chapters, the 30 days, on YouTube free. I'm reading the chapter and then I'm painting to it.
Oh, how
So that's
cool.
totally free. So you can go to YouTube, go to my YouTube channel. There's a playlist for 30 Days to Unstoppable. It's the featured video. It's easy to find. But just listen to it there. That would make me just as happy. I want people to know that this exists so
Yes.
that it's available to you.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. It may not work for you,
Yeah.
but you're an energetic being, so I think it will. But anyway, like, I don't care. Like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Just go check it out and see how it feels. And because we need it right now. We've so got this. We're on the brink of so much incredible change in this world. And for better, for worse, humans, I know, speaking for myself, often it takes that, like, like I call the cosmic 2x4. Like, it needs to become painfully obvious that change is necessary for us to make the changes. And that's where we are. And that's exciting. And it's why we're here.
Yeah.
So let's rock it.
Yeah. I agree. And do you have any other specials or anything on any of your courses over the holidays, or anything that you'd like to share with people?
Right. So we just finished a big promotion. There's a free course on my site, the Life Artist Masterclass. And that is a journey of 5 symbols. So my intention with that, there's no painting involved or drawing. I mean, you can paint or draw the symbols if you want, but it was really meant to be information for how to live as a life artist.
Right.
And how to tune into these symbols. And so that's free. When you go whitneyfreya.com, you click the online courses, it takes you to whitneyfreyastudio.com, and it's on there. It won't be hard to find.
So that'd be a great place for people to start then.
Great place to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So buy 30 Days to Unstoppable, go do the Life Artist Masterclass, and then you'll know, if you're meant to do more. But life is, it's whatever you decide it is.
Yeah.
So I like it to be the magical adventure treasure hunt where we're challenged and we learn and we grow and we get to celebrate along the way. So if I can help spread more of that into anybody's life, that is my happiness.
Your job is done. Absolutely. And you're on all the social media channels as well, Whitney?
Yeah. Facebook is Whitney Freya Canvas, and Whitney Freya on Instagram. Those are, I don't TikTok.
No, neither do I.
Not really. LinkedIn.
A step too far.
I don't want to deal with all of it,
No.
But yeah, I'm the only Whitney Freya. It's for now. I should stop saying that. Someone's going to name their child Whitney Freya. But there are no other Whitney Freyas in the world.
Right.
At least online. So you can find me super easy on anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with Owen Bardsley. There's no other Owen Bardsleys either.
Yeah, that's so fun, isn't it?
There's not that many Owens at all, but yeah, it's great. Yeah. Love it. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy. And I can't wait to read more of your book. I couldn't read enough of it yesterday, but I'd really love to go right through that myself. I just think it's such a worthwhile, not even worthwhile, it's such an essential process for people to go through. So I really appreciate your time, Whitney. Thank you.
Thank you, Arwen. Thank you for creating this space for us all.